Well, of course, we've been telling you all morning a stunning move by the Justice Department that you heard here first. The DOJ dropping its case against General Michael Flynn, President Trump's first national security advisor. Flynn had pled guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russia's then ambassador to the United States, a plea he later reversed, President Trump hailing the move as a victory for justice.
It's treason. It's treason. So I'm very happy for General Flynn. He was a great warrior, and he still is a great warrior. Now, in my book, he's an even greater warrior. What happened to him should never happen again.
Meanwhile, the DOJ's about face coming after internal memos were released, raising serious questions about the investigation into Flynn and the Mueller investigation. Joining us right now is House Judiciary Committee member, Georgia Congressman Doug Collins. Congressman, it's great to see you this morning. We've been working on this a long time and zeroing in on the wrongdoing. First, your reaction to the charges being dropped on General Flynn.
It's about time. I think this has been a great discussion. It's been something we've talked about for the last, number of years, but also in the last week. It's finally showing that after someone gets in, and I'll just say sort of the adult in the room, and Bill Barr is that adult in the room, the Attorney General, saying we're not going to have a Department of Justice or an FBI that is run by basically a corrupt little cabal of thugs who didn't want this president, who didn't like him as a candidate and didn't want him as a president, are not going to be able to get away with doing whatever they want to do. And that FBI, the filing yesterday in court was just stunning, the things that were in there that they were admitting to, from Strzok and them, Page talking about they were so glad that the case closed, from Comey, basically defying everybody and saying, no, we're going to do this anyway. It just goes to show that these who have portrayed themselves to be superheroes protecting America were actually just basically a bunch of, folks who just said that we don't like the political landscape and we know better than everybody else.
That's right. They didn't care that 53 million Americans voted for Donald Trump. They wanted him out. And that comes clear with this House Intelligence Committee release of the transcripts from the closed-door interviews in the Russia probe. It found no evidence of collusion, which we knew already. Top Obama administration officials are all saying that they had no proof the Trump campaign was working with Russia. Former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, quote, in these records saying, I never saw any direct empirical evidence. Former National Security Advisor Susan Rice, I don't recall any intelligence or any evidence. And former UN Ambassador Samantha Power, quote, I am not in possession of anything. I mean, Congressman, they didn't have any evidence of any collusion between Donald Trump and his campaign and the Russians in May of 2017 when they named Robert Mueller a special counsel to investigate that, when they knew there was nothing there, but they just wanted to keep it going.
Well, they wanted to keep it going. The three that you just named, however, was really disturbing, Clapper, Powers, and Rice. But they were willing cheerleaders on the side, going on talk shows, going on news shows, and just continually sniping at the Trump administration, the Trump candidacy, implying that something was wrong, implying that there was issues. I mean, if you remember this, it was just they gave no break, but yet having nothing there, they could use their willing lackeys like Comey and Strzok and Page to continue, and McCabe to continue this process. It's just devastating. And then when you had Attorney General Sessions at the time recuse himself, the cabal was running the asylum at the time, and it just showed up. And this is something that can happen. If it can happen to Flynn, it could happen to the candidate, Donald Trump. It could happen to President Donald Trump. What about you and me, Maria? What about a group that gets together? We've got to make sure that Attorney General Barr is doing the things that he can, and that Christopher Wray either does it or doesn't. He needs to make sure that this can never happen again. And remember, Obama administration, it's even been reported today, President Obama at the time seemed to be obsessed with General Flynn. He had his own issues with him, but yet was consistently knowing things that were going on. So this is just a bigger story that keeps getting worse for these who proclaim to be saviors of America. They were actually detractors to our very democracy.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned President Obama, because within these documents, we learn that it was Obama who first brought up the Logan Act, which was the act that, was never used to prosecute anyone, or very rarely in the history of our country. And here they were trying to corner General Flynn for talking to somebody who he was about to have relations with anyway, because he was the NSA for Donald Trump. He was actually a sitting national security advisor. advisor sitting when they had that interview in January of 2017. So what's your reaction to what Jim Comey did yesterday? I saw that you replied to him on Twitter. He's over there putting a tweet out saying that the DOJ has lost its way. Is he losing his mind?
I don't know what Jim Comey's problem is. I think he's having his whole world unravel because this nice little tale that he's tried to tell of putting out tweets, looking at trees, being the philosophical voice of reason, and now it's all becoming unwound. We see Jim Comey for who he really is. Basically seeming to be a narcissistic person who just wanted to get at a president who likes the limelight, who likes being interviewed. And then as we played, you and I have talked about it, when last year he just sort of laughed at, oh, I knew I could take advantage of it because this administration was transitioning and they do it and stop me anyway. Now we're also finding out that he actually went against the advice of even the own Department of Justice at the time, that's saying they needed to notify the White House about these interviews, and he chose not to do it. He basically told Sally Yates on the way there that they were already on their way. It's just sad that somebody that the media can pick up on, who was credible at one point in his career, has lost all credibility for those of us who believe that justice ought to be blind, it ought to be fairly treated. And when we see this to a sitting president and a candidate at the time, it just makes us all sit back and say, what can we do to make sure this never happens again? And that's why we need to make sure changes are actually followed through on.
Yeah, and you're talking about the FISA changes, and of course you've been very involved in that. But what about the domino effect? Do you think this is the first domino to fall, and will there be others? People want accountability. We know what that cabal did. It wasn't just General Flynn. It was also trying to entrap a sitting president, despite the fact that half the country voted for him. I'm talking about Jim Comey, Andrew McCabe, Lisa Page, and Peter Strzok. How about John Brennan? John Brennan, former head of the CIA, ran around on TV regularly for 3 years and said that President Trump committed treason, which was exactly, in fact, what the cabal was doing, not President Trump.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, if you don't want anybody to look at what your problems are, you try to shine a light somewhere else and get people distracted. That's exactly what was happening here in Brennan and the rest of them. I do believe this is the first step in what we have been waiting for. Maria, we've talked about this for a long time, and with you and many others, that where does accountability come in? Well, it started. And I think we're seeing it now. There's no way that Strzok and Page and McCabe and Comey can now sit in any kind of right face, and even with his comments yesterday, and say, oh, we were just doing our jobs. No, they wasn't. They were having a political vendetta against this president and then candidate before then. And they'd already bungled the Hillary Clinton email investigations. And it's just a collapsing tent here with them. So I do believe now that hopefully we're going to see even more from Durham. I think he's been patiently building the case. We're going to see what happens there. But I have to admit, this is a change in the Department of Justice is actually doing justice instead of just having to sit back and watch what was happening.
Congressman, thank you. Great insights from you, as always. We so appreciate your time this morning.
Maria, thanks so much. Have a great Friday.
And to you, Congressman Doug Collins joining us.